We're going to learn as much as we possibly can about storytelling from Julia, who is a storytelling genius. So we're hoping that she can give us some of those nonprofit storytelling actionable tips and tricks and all that good stuff. But I'll let you go ahead and take it away and intro yourself and get started. Thanks, guys.
Oh, thanks. Thanks, LaVon. Thanks to the entire team at Boardable. Thanks everyone that is coming today to learn about storytelling, one of my favorite topics. So we're going to dive right in. I would love if you put your questions into the questions section. If you look down, there's a questions tab. The chat can kind of go pretty fast and things kind of get lost in there. If you do put it in the chat, we'll make sure to pull it out and hopefully we'll be able to answer them. But we want to get right to kind of the meat of the presentation. So I'm not going to tell you too much about my bio, but if you've not met me before, I'm so happy to meet you and see you virtually. I'm Julia Campbell. I have been doing this work for about 20 years. I've been working in nonprofits as a development director and a marketing director, and I've had my own consulting business, speaking and talking and enjoying really talking with people in the trenches and everyone working to, advocate for social good. And I wrote the book, Storytelling in the Digital Age, which is a guide for nonprofits. And that's where I take a lot of my principles from. I have a lovely family. I'm very, very lucky. So I'm thrilled to be doing the work that I love with organizations that I love and respect. So why do we talk about storytelling? Well, the thing is that it's so much more than a buzzword. It's more than a trend. It's more than just sort of a marketing tactic. It really is the way that we connect with each other. It's the way that we communicate information, and it's the way that we relate to each other and create empathy. And the stories we tell really create the world that we live in. And not only that, storytelling affects the brain in scientific ways. So we are actually trained in our biology to remember the aspects of a story much more than we are to remember things we read, some data points, some news headlines. If we hear a story, it helps us process information, not only process it and understand it, but it helps us remember it. And it really helps our brain ingrain these kinds of important concepts into our consciousness. So storytelling has been scientifically proven to change behavior, to change thoughts and minds. It's kind of the most effective way to really create social change. And for me, storytelling, this is the way we are going to stand out from the robots and AI. I have nothing against AI. Personally, I like ChatGPT. I use ChatGPT for my LLM. If you guys are using any kind of generative AI to brainstorm, to help you create outlines for things, to help run ideas past this particular large language model, I use ChatGPT and Claude. I'm really a big fan. The whole point that I'm trying to say is that more than 90% of online content could be created by artificial intelligence by this time next year. Now, for people like me that are content creators and thought leaders and continually putting our unique ideas out into the world, like all of you, this could be horrifying. The thing is, the way that we're going to stand out is to put our fingerprints on our content, to put our unique spin on things. AI does not know the stories that you know. AI is not in your community. It is not reading, well, it could be reading your emails, but it's certainly not on the ground with you, experiencing what you're experiencing, changing lives every day like you are changing lives. So I wouldn't be scared of AI, but I will emphasize that storytelling and sharing our stories, that is the way we're going to stand out. That is the way we're going to cut through the clutter. And that is the way we're going to get noticed and continue to make change. And that is really probably one of the only ways. We have to get out of our comfort zone a little bit and really challenge these models because they don't understand our unique perspective. Okay. So that is something that I want to impart to you is don't be scared by it, but let's embrace what makes us unique. And that would be storytelling. And social change can't happen without powerful storytelling. It just simply can't. Social change, like no one's mind has really been changed by a data point. Data is very important. Data-driven storytelling and data-driven decisions, and certainly data-backed like best practices, that's all very, very important. And I would never negate the power of data and the potential of data. But social change on a grand scale, the things that we're trying to do, the people we're trying to reach, the hearts that we're trying to change, that can't happen without powerful storytelling. And I also want you to stop thinking about this as a megaphone to promote your agenda. We kind of think of storytelling as a way, we're just going to fundraise. We're just going to market what we're doing. We're just going to send out a bunch of press releases and do a bunch of PR around a story. But you want to think of it as a gift for your supporters. We have to have empathy for our supporters. They're busy. We're all busy. We're all overwhelmed. I mean, the word busy and overwhelmed, those two words are used way too much. But your supporters, they really want these stories. They want to understand the context of the complicated issue that you work on. And the best way to do that is through storytelling. So I have a 3-part nonprofit storytelling framework. It's really hard to get through in just 30 minutes. But the principles of it, the pillars, are collecting the story intentionally, crafting it in a meaningful way, and sharing it out to the world on specific platforms. So what does this mean? When we're collecting a story, we have to think about our why. What happens a lot is that we tell stories about the how and the what. So we'll tell stories about how we do something or what we are doing every day, but we're not connecting it to our why. We're not connecting it to our vision, to our North Star, to our mission, to the reason that we exist. And this is really what we need to be doing. This is Simon Sinek. Simon Sinek wrote a book called Start With Why, phenomenal book, really got me thinking about nonprofit communication specifically, how we do not focus enough on the why. We focus more on the how and the what. Think about Humans of New York. So why do people love Humans of New York? If you have not heard of Humans of New York, go on Instagram, go on Facebook, look it up. Humans of New York, it's a daily reminder that normal people, not celebrities, not just celebrities. I mean, celebrities do matter, but not just celebrities matter. It's a daily reminder of our common humanity. That is why they exist. That is why they exist. People would miss it if it went away. The stories that are told on the Humans of New York page are unedited and they're completely real. They make a lot of people uncomfortable sometimes. They're controversial, they're provocative, but they're real. And that is their why. That doesn't have to be your why, but that is their why. And that is why people love them. That is why people go there. That is why people would follow them after they were, if they were canceled tomorrow, people would absolutely miss it. The daily reminder that normal people matter. The key with storytelling that's effective is understanding your audience. Who are your supporters? What do they value? Why are they interested in your work? What drives them? What questions do they have? Like what myths and misconceptions, what stereotypes, maybe what news articles and headlines that, are getting it all wrong that you can address. I see this a lot. Like, what do they want to understand? If you think about an organization like Invisible People, that's Mark Horvath's organization, they are not for everybody, of course. Nobody is for everybody. No one's for everybody. You might love them, you might hate them. They tell real and raw stories of people that are experiencing homelessness. Their entire why is helping address myths and misconceptions around homelessness, stereotypes around homelessness, humanizing people that are experiencing homelessness, and advocating for actual solutions to homelessness. They know their audience. Their audience is usually reading the news. They're very civic-minded. They're usually political, and they're very empathetic. So they understand their audience. And you really need to drill down into why do people support you? So in their words, you don't want to put words in their mouth. What are the top 5 reasons that your supporters get and stay involved? And if you don't know those top 5 reasons, then you need to call people on the phone. You need to email them. You need to talk to them at events, talk to them at board meetings, have board members call them, do a survey. but think really not about like what you want them to think, but what do they think of you? And what are the top 5 reasons that they get and stay involved? And that's going to help you when you're collecting your stories, because you're going to be thinking always with that lens in mind, getting the stories that respond to the reasons why people get and stay involved. You really want to think noteworthy, not newsworthy. It does not have to make headlines. Okay. Your donors want something of note. They want something of note. They don't need something that's going to make the New York Times front page. Okay. So what kinds of stories are we talking about here? Well, I believe that we should be thinking about collecting stories that evoke one of these 3 emotions. Okay. Credibility, emotion, either that's sad or angry or indignant or happy, and logic. So ethos, pathos, logos. If you ever took a philosophy class in high school or in college, you probably learned this. This is Aristotle's rules of persuasion. The only way to persuade someone is to have credibility. That's why we read my bio right before I even start talking. I tell you I wrote a book. I've been doing this for this many years. That helps establish credibility. And then emotion. There has to be some kind of emotional resonance that's going to help me take an action. And then logic, that logical piece that says, this is a problem. This is something I need to solve. This is something that is urgent and timely. And the best sort of fundraising appeals and fundraising stories really handle all 3 things. Like, first of all, credibility is table stakes. If you're not credible, no one's going to listen to you. Emotion and logic, those are a little harder and a little fuzzier. So we're going to go through some examples. This is Rosie's Place in Boston. They do a fantastic job establishing that credibility with the sort of the longevity that they've had in the community, the way that they approach the problem that they're addressing. But they also do a great job of not exploiting. They do really a good job with ethical storytelling, but still conveying an emotion and conveying sort of a logical need for their services. Now, the logic doesn't have to be 12 million people are experiencing this. It really could be this one person is experiencing this, and it's urgent and timely and necessary for us to address. Think about Back on My Feet, how they do storytelling. They do very effective storytelling on their website. You can see that it's in they just quote people. They don't write the story. They don't over edit it. They don't over copyright. They simply talk to clients. They talk to volunteers. They talk to board members, and they get these fantastic little anecdotes. A story does not have to be, I'm thinking my son is reading Harry Potter now for the 2nd time. My daughter's reading The Hunger Games for the 2nd time. My husband's probably reading Lord of the Rings for the 90th time. It doesn't have to be an epic journey like that. It really could be a little anecdote with a little detail and just a little bit of emotion inside of it. Now, confidentiality comes up a lot in my talks about storytelling. I encourage you all to be like Amira. They are now Amira Incorporated. They were Amira New England. They never share names, identifying details, or photos of their clients. They share a lot of stock photography or a lot of photography that they've kind of, made up, or they share photography of staff members and volunteers and board members and their executive director. But think about stories you can tell consistently. It's Milestone Monday. What story could you tell every Monday about someone hitting a milestone without giving their name and identifying details? A woman has completed her 30-day program and is now entering phase 1 of her full whole person care program at Amira. That's amazing? If you have confidentiality restrictions, I encourage you to look at Amira. There are a lot of other organizations doing great work without sharing identifying details. If you can share from a volunteer perspective, I call what Best Buddies does these little like mission moments. So it's simply something that comes up in my feed and makes me smile. It makes me happy. It's all about the why. It doesn't say, I was matched with Sarah 5 years ago, and then we had to go through the interview process, and then we did this, and then we did this, and then we did this. No, it's the why. I'm so grateful for Best Buddies, a program that introduced me to the coolest girl I know. That is a mission moment, and that is a fantastic storytelling technique that you can use. It's not going through the entirety of how they met and how long they volunteered and every single thing they've done. It's simply just something showing up in the feed and making you happy. Asking people for their stories, that can be effective. A lot of us don't have the reach that Susan G. Komen does, but they do a really effective job on asking people for stories, either their own personal stories or stories of people that they've lost or stories of other survivors in their family. So I think that, if it's something where it can build community, it's definitely worth asking people for stories. When you're doing a campaign like Macmillan Cancer Support is doing, which they do every year, they do a That's My Dad campaign. It is important that you kind of seed your campaign with stories from staff and volunteers. So what Macmillan Cancer Support does that is so effective is they're sharing stories from people that work there. So they're humanizing the organization, which is creating that credibility. And then they are creating that emotional connection where people just kind of want to chime in and talk about their dad or talk about someone in their life that was a father figure. And this is an incredibly effective fundraiser for them. To join in, simply share a photo of your dad, 3 words to describe him. And if you want to give, you can text dad to 70550. So there is that fundraising call to action. You don't necessarily need to do that as well. To establish credibility, share stories of the people who work for your organization. Leon Winston, he was a client fresh out of rehab in need of housing. He's our COO and housing director. That establishes immediate credibility. You're walking the walk, you're not just talking the talk. And it really builds that emotional and human connection with people. What about interns? I think that we don't share enough about our interns, about the people that come in and volunteer maybe once a week, about our receptionists, about our frontline staff. We need to, as much as they're comfortable, highlight the people that make the work happen every day. And this is also a fantastic way, if you have that confidentiality clause, to share stories without sharing identifying details of a client. Another way to capture a story and share a story is in a volunteer spotlight. Volunteer spotlight's very easy to do. I recommend maybe talking to the volunteer and getting a quote from them. But you can certainly do it like the Boys and Girls Club of the Austin area does. Donor spotlights, another one. Why do people support you? This is a very effective form of social proof. But also what I have found is sometimes when organizations share donor stories, they share in-kind donor stories or major donor stories or monthly donor stories. People will reach out and say, oh, I didn't even know that you wanted monthly donors. Like, I didn't even know you needed monthly donors. I didn't know you had a major gifts program. So it's just awareness raising. But then also the donors love it and the donors will share it. And also the volunteer spotlights, like the people share these volunteer spotlights to their own networks, and then their networks see the story and they say, oh, I don't know anything about Boys and Girls Clubs. And maybe a few people in their network will ask. So it's sort of like free publicity, free social media engagement for you. And the most simple way to share a story is just a quote. You can all do this in Canva. You can do this probably just in PowerPoint. I hope my donation will help other people struggling with finding their way in this world. That's kind of the most simplest form of storytelling. No photo, no video, if you really are just starting out. Now, captivating story building blocks. You can do this in 6 words. A hook, a character, stakes, details. Call to action is a bonus. Think about the most famous 6-word story, right? It's baby shoes for sale, never worn. That has a hook, that has a character, that has stakes, that has details. Baby shoes for sale, never worn. You don't need 1,000 words to get the hook, the character, the stakes, and the details. So I'll show you some examples. Sarah's life turned around in one night. Now that's also a very good email header or email subject line, because I really want to know, how did her life turn around and what happened to her? Another one. Now this email I've had since 2015, and it's still one of the most powerful emails I've ever received. If I died, who would come to my funeral? This is Plummer Youth Promise in Salem, Massachusetts. Used to be called Plummer Home for Boys. This kind of storytelling, it's provocative, right? It's emotional. It hits you. And it really piques your curiosity and gets you to explore more. So think about the questions that people are asking. Think about sort of your frequently asked questions, and think about what goes on every day that might be interesting. We have to start thinking like journalists. Okay. Look at this. This is an article from WBUR written by this, the NPR affiliate in Massachusetts, written by a journalist. If we start looking at how journalists write their stories, we are going to write better stories. Now, you're never going to talk about the particular article, the particular legislative issue that they are speaking about without starting with a story, because that's going to grab attention, pique interest, pique curiosity, and get people reading and get people invested. Because once I read about Lynn, and once I read about 25-year-old Christina in Lynn, now I'm invested. Now I'm thinking, oh my gosh, like she's gone from jail to working full time as a medical assistant, living with her 3 kids. I have 2 kids. Oh my gosh, I really want to hear her story. Like now I'm invested. So that's why we start with story, but you do not need a long article to start with story. Think about the details. Where can you put in the details? I blended into the background with my cardboard sign. No longer human. The more the chill cut to the bone. Those details really help people process stories. So you obviously, if you're doing a 6-word story, you wouldn't be able to do all of the details. But if you can add details of sight and sound and what's going on and the visual landscape, and the more details you can add, the more likely people are to remember it and also to pass it on. And then thinking about that hook. What is that hook that's going to grab people? That time I almost died in Honduras. I think of what would grab my attention and kind of cut through the clutter and the noise. Now, your stories are the gold, right? So the story that you're capturing and collecting is the gold. Where you're telling it, you've got to pound that gold into different shapes. If you are doing your 50th anniversary gala and you're sharing a story, it could be a 5-minute story. If you're sharing it on an Instagram reel, it's going to be 30 seconds. So your stories are the gold, but how and where you share them will differ. So where you share, it depends on your goals. What do you hope to achieve? Is it a marketing, advocacy, or fundraising campaign? What does success look like? What do you want people to do after they've read the story? It also depends on your target audience. Like stories shared on TikTok are different than stories shared on YouTube. They're different than stories shared on LinkedIn. Where does your audience spend their time? Which platforms do they use, right? Where are you able to consistently communicate? It really does depend on your capacity as well. How much time do you have? What kind of budget do you have? And also, really, where do you like to spend time? If X/Twitter is a toxic environment for you, then you might want to be taking a break from it. If you really don't like YouTube, then you have to be continually thinking about these things. And there's no right or wrong answer, and there's no one size fits all for every single person. But where you share these stories, it really does depend on your capacity, time, and budget capacity as well. So the number one place you should be sharing stories, your website. Put them on your website. Stories have changed lives. This is your number one marketing, fundraising, and advocacy tool. It's going to show up in Google search. It's going to help people understand your why. You want to look at the Pine Street Inn in Boston, like get your own vibe. You know what I mean? Like this is the Denver Rescue Mission. They have a little bit of a darker vibe for their stories of changed lives. Pine Street Inn has a very happy, colorful, upbeat vibe. And it depends on your brand voice, but just make sure you're sharing stories across your website. Email is key. How many of you share like a quarterly newsletter that is just literally 5, probably 20 different events and things and flyers and different fonts and colors? So that might be important to certain followers, but other followers really want to see the background. They want to see the why. They want to understand what all these events are going to. What are all these fundraisers doing? What is my auction, what is my auction item going to? So we have to match our promotions with what our audience is interested in. Graphics, text overlay, simple, short, sweet. That works really well in an email, remembering that over 60% of people read emails on their phones. And then I love what the Night Ministry does. I'm trying to encourage all my clients to do this from the desk of the executive director, like from a person. It's like a letter from a person. So it doesn't feel like it's just automated and it's just marketing from the Night Ministry. It's a real, genuine letter. And Paul Haman writes these at least once a month, and he does a phenomenal job with them. And then, of course, sharing on social media. Make it short and sweet, poignant, eye-catching visuals, a very specific call to action. You don't have to share a client's name, and you don't have to share a client's details. Once again, Amira, they do a great job with this. They simply tell anecdotes, and they always hide identifying details. When you're using social media, think about jumping on a cause or awareness day, like Carers Week. There's a cause and awareness day for each and every one of you. There's just, I don't even know what today is. I meant to figure out what today was, but there's a cause and awareness day for each and every one of you. Think about sharing stories around that. It's a great way to get found by new people that are interested in the cause. Now, as we wrap up, probably the most important piece of advice I would give you is you're not bothering people when you share stories. You are not disrupting them. You are giving them the gift, and it connects the dots for your donors. If you think of your organization as this big sort of storytelling, what's it called? Connect the dots, a big connect the dots. Your stories connect the dots and help donors, supporters, volunteers make sense of what you do and who you are and what you stand for, most importantly. And people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. So listen to the very wise words of Maya Angelou, and just remember, it's all about how you're making people feel. Okay, that's the end of the formal presentation. I think that was the shortest storytelling. I loved it, though. I think it was really cool, really good to do it in that way.
Yes, you shared a ton of knowledge with us. Thank you so much. We did have a couple of questions. So
Yes.
In the last couple of minutes, if you're good with that.
Sure. Yeah.
Jess asked, do you find that posts with text on images perform worse across social platforms due to the algorithm favoring photo or video forward content?
Well, video is always going to perform best across the board. Video. All the platforms love video, especially short form video. So that's always going to be your number one. I don't mind, look at my Nonprofit Nation graphic. If it's a little bit of text, that tends to work well because people can see immediately without reading the caption, like what you are trying to say. So what I would do is test out some text, like do A/B tests and see if like a photo with no text works better than a photo with some text on it. Also, it differs by platform. Instagram, it doesn't work so well. LinkedIn, maybe Facebook. It also depends what you're trying to say and what you're trying to promote. So it's very context sensitive, but I think if there's a lot of text on the post, it's not going to perform well. But if there's just sort of like, I'm just making a statistic, 1 in 5 dogs is being murdered. I don't even know. In our community. I just made
that would
up.
get my attention.
Well, it would get I shouldn't be saying that right now with everything going on, but that would get my attention.
Yes.
Or 1 in 3 children is going hungry this Christmas or something.
Yep.
If it's something like that, I really think it would work. But I would test it out.
Yeah, of course. And then a question from Holly. How can international organizations use storytelling to engage with a U.S. audience? And she specifically, so her organization works in Kenya, and they're having trouble with that. They feel like there's maybe a lack of cultural or geographic connection. Do you have any thoughts around that?
Well, I mean, you got to find the right audience. So the thing with that kind of audience, you do have to find the people that are going to care. So it might involve maybe some Google ad grants, like getting Google ad grants. You can target ads or some Facebook ads. Personally, I served in the Peace Corps in Senegal and West Africa. So I would be more inclined but there are people that have never left their neighborhood that might not understand or care. And that's fine as well. They have their own interests. But the key here is finding that right audience. And that really might be experimenting with working with influencers or purchasing ads and targeting things by specific demographics. There also has to be some kind of urgency. Like as you saw with Ukraine, there was millions and millions, if not billions of dollars donated. With the Australian wildfires, people in the US donated millions of dollars. So there has to be not like a crisis, but there has to be that urgency and timeliness, like why this, why now? So maybe tying it to some news headlines, but really understanding that a lot of people, I don't want to say a lot, but some people in the US don't know where Kenya is, and that's fine. And they care about other causes maybe. And not everyone's going to be caring about this as much as we want everyone to care about it. But going to those places, like maybe people that subscribe to National Geographic or people that subscribe to The Economist or people that subscribe to more international publications, like you can see that information when you target on Facebook and LinkedIn. You can see what other pages they like. You can see if they like to travel. You can see if they have an interest. If they have an interest in Kenya specifically. So it just takes a little bit of detective work to find these people, but they are out there.
Yeah, and I like that idea of tying it with urgency too. I think that's really powerful. Okay, so we are over time, so we will go ahead and end it here. But thank you so much. This was really impactful, and I think awesome power half hour. So
Yes.
we will send out the recording afterwards. And of course, if you have any questions, just continue to send them our way and we'll get those answered. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thanks for having me. Thanks everyone for the work that you do. Have a great rest of your week.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.